Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little different than the other content I've created. It's more of a story time, and the reason I'm telling it is because I want to shed a little bit of light into my situation when I was at work when I was pregnant, and then also just how badly pregnant women can be treated by their employers. This is obviously going back around 4 years for me now. I've tried to get as much screenshots of conversations, emails, everything like that, just so that I have some form of receipts to show you guys so you know that what I'm saying is the truth. I'm going to start from when I found out that I was pregnant, and if you've seen my postnatal depression video, you know that I found out while I was at work. I do go into a little bit more detail in that video, but just for context, I was really sure I wasn't pregnant, and I done it, I guess, to prove that I wasn't pregnant, and obviously it backfired. Now, it was the 17th of March when I found out I was pregnant. I took the 18th of March off because I had to go and get an internal scan, and then I went back to work as normal on the 19th. And I remember this day so well because I was in bits, like my head was all over the place, I was really fragile. Really, I wasn't in the best mindset to be in work, but you know, I needed that coin, so I went in. And again, just for context, I worked in a hairdresser's that was owned by a woman who worked in a beauty salon. Now, the buildings were separate, but they were right next to each other. This meant that I didn't work with my boss or any higher management, but my boss would often come into the salon a lot of the time to get her hair done or just to see how we were doing. So anyway, on the 19th, she came in and there was a lady who had left a plate in her section while she was getting her hair done, and I put it in the kitchen ready to be washed up when I had a second. So my boss saw the plate in the kitchen and she kind of like went off on one a little bit, and I genuinely remember just breaking down, and I was like, to me the plate was like the least important thing in my life at that point in time, and I think even she was a bit like, why is Eden crying over a plate? So I actually did end up telling her much earlier than what I would have chosen to, but she actually suggested that I take some time off, get my head straight, and then come back to work when I was feeling better. So I took 2 days off, and then I went back to work as normal. Everything was fine after that. My boss would, you know, check up on me, check up on the baby, everything seemed normal. Now, another thing to note, my boss was very up and down, so some days everything would be great and some days it was the end of the world and like the business was failing. She would go on about how we weren't making enough money and how we were causing her financial stress and we needed to do more. Now, she was very stressed out about how much money we were making and she needed us to make more. So we started checking data on our computer system. You could check how much you'd made for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year since you started. I feel like all of us felt a bit uneasy because it was like, oh god, if I don't make enough money, what's going to happen? So a lot of the time there was one stylist who would always be on top, and then I would usually either come second or third, and I wasn't a senior stylist at this point. I was still an apprentice on £4.50 an hour, so making money for me wasn't a massive priority. I was still learning how to do hair. I can't remember exactly what day this happened, but it was a day in April, and I had a bikini wax booked in at the beauty spa, and I was doing a lady's hair, and one of my colleagues came up to me and said, oh, the boss has called, she wants you to come for a meeting after your wax. The meeting was basically along the lines of they weren't making enough money and they were going to have to let some people go, and they were starting off with the people who didn't make any money. So I said to her, but you know, like my contract, my responsibilities are to sweep the salon, clean hair, answer the phone. There's nothing about making money. Like, I'm still learning how to do hair. And just to add to that, I mean, I do make money. I make more money than some senior stylists, so I just didn't understand. And then we kind of left the meeting on that note. She said she'd get back to me, and then on my way out I spoke to another manager, and I really did confide in her. I told her I was really stressed out, like what was I supposed to do if I didn't have a job and I couldn't get maternity, and I sat there and I cried to her, and she told me, you know, she reassured me and said everything would be fine, and they didn't realize that I made that money and whatever, just to like, you know, leave it, forget it and move on. And after that, I mean, I'm not an idiot. I knew there was something behind it because it made no sense to me. Okay, so you've called me in for a meeting pretty much to fire me because I don't make enough money without knowing how much money I made. Like, it just didn't make sense. I was very aware of what their intentions could be, and so I was much more alert after that. Anyway, so around the same time they hired a third-party accountant, and this accountant's job was to make sure the salon was earning enough money and find ways that they could save money and earn more money. But what she did on a day-to-day basis was very different to that. I mean, she would tell us, you know, how to speak on the phone, when we could take days off, what we could wear, and it was just very strange because her job role didn't match what she was doing. But I just kind of brushed it off as, you know, it's not my business. And anyway, around a month after this, I got really ill with a UTI. Probably a bit TMI, but I suffer from recurring UTIs, so they're not alien to me. It's not like I've never had one before, but this one was so different. I don't know if it's because I was pregnant, I'm not sure what it was, but my pelvic pressure was so excruciatingly painful. Like, I couldn't stand up, I was constantly uncomfortable, I didn't have an appetite, I was really ill. And I went to my GP, who obviously confirmed the UTI, and he actually gave me a sick note so I could be off for 2 weeks. Now, I gave this sick note to my employer and they were really difficult about it. I mean, she asked me to come in and I said, like, is there no way I can just send a picture of it? Like, I'm not very well. They were just generally making it quite hard for me. At the time, I worked with 2 of my friends who I actually knew from outside of work, work and they were calling me and saying like, oh, they're talking a lot about you being ill. I was also told that they didn't believe I was ill. So I felt really uncomfortable. And during this time that I was off, I actually spoke to Citizens Advice just to kind of get a better idea of what my rights were, what I was entitled to. But I didn't tell anyone I'd done that. It was just for my own benefit. So I could get out of the illegal situation I felt like I was headed towards. Anyway, the UTI didn't get better. I was on antibiotics, but I was still like in and out of A&E. And my doctor ended up extending my sick note for another 2 weeks, which obviously didn't go down well with anyone, including myself. I mean, I was living off of £98 sick pay a week. And because it wasn't getting any better, he booked me in for a scan of my kidneys. So I told them that I had the scan booked and hopefully that would show us what the root of the problem was and we could fix it and then I'd be back in work. Now, my boss had asked me to come in for another meeting, but it was on the day of my scan. And I just said, you know, I'm still not well. I have a hospital appointment on that day. Is there no way it can be done on the phone or like done later? And she basically said, no, it's urgent. You need to come in. Like, we need to discuss this now. And I think where I let my anxiety and my nervousness get the better of me, I agreed to go in because I wanted to know exactly what was going on. And I went in before my scan. And when I got there, all of the beauticians were like, oh my God, you're 5 months pregnant. Like, why are you so tiny? You look so ill. You look so pale. And it just kind of confirmed to me that they didn't believe I was ill. And it was just frustrating because it's like, you shouldn't have to see the sickness on me to believe me. Anyway, I went for the meeting, which was with my boss and the third-party accountant. And even at the time, I felt very uncomfortable because I was just thinking, what could she possibly have to do with what's going on? And they basically sat me down, and it makes me sick to this day what they said because it's so manipulative and so wrong. The angle that they went with was that they were really concerned about my health, and they were basically just saying, you know, they don't know how long I'm going to be ill. I don't know how long I'm going to be ill. It's not helpful for them because they're losing money, and you know, they're worried about my baby's health. They don't want me to put the baby at risk. And they basically went on to say, you know, we think the best thing you could do is resign. And I was like, what? Like, how on earth is that going to help this situation at all? And I was just, do you know when you're just in so much shock? I just thought, I can't do this. I can't believe you've made me come all the way from home to here to try and get me to quit my job. Like, I said no, obviously. After leaving the meeting, I went to the hair salon where I worked, and the accountant basically came, and I was like in the middle of having a panic attack. There was other things going on in my life, like something very, very bad happened in my personal life on that day. And you know, that was adding to just all the stress that I had already. And she basically came over and could see the state I was in and still proceeded to ask everyone to leave me alone so she could talk to me, because she had found a solution for the problem. And her solution was that I become self-employed. And it's so funny because I actually remember thinking at the time, like, how does me becoming self-employed help your concern for my baby's health? Like, the two things just really don't add up. I mean, they were offering me like 40% of my earnings and then like a percentage on the products I sold and stuff. So they made it sound really great, but what it meant in actuality was that I'm self-employed, they don't have to pay me maternity pay. Obviously I said no. I went to my hospital appointment, I focused on getting better, and then when I was finally better, I came back to work. And I feel like this is the only part of this story that I actually played quite smartly. So I basically told someone who I knew had a very, very big mouth that I had spoken to Citizens Advice and that I kind of knew my rights and what I was entitled to, and that I felt like what they were doing was unlawful and that they were trying to get rid of me for the reason of not paying me my maternity pay. This person, as I thought they would, went back and told my boss, and then after that my boss never directly tried to do anything to me again. But what did happen, I was on reception with one of my colleagues and she thought it'd be funny to type in our names to the email search and, you know, see what comes up. What did come up, and I'm not joking, to this day reading this email makes me feel so sick because it is so twisted that people can actually sit there and conspire against you and premeditate something so horrible just to avoid paying maternity pay, which gets paid back to you by the government. Like, that is the one bit I've never been able to wrap my head around. You get it back, so what? Why? I don't know. But anyway, so before I read the email, I just want to make the timeline make a little bit more sense. I got ill in May. I spoke to Citizens Advice on the 22nd of May, and then I went in for the meeting on the 27th of May. So all of that happened in May, and then I returned to work in June. I think it was on June the 12th. But the email is dated Friday the 23rd of June, meaning that it was after I'd returned to work and after my boss had found out that I was suspicious of what they were doing. Now, the email is from the generic business email, but it's to my boss and the managers, and I found out later on that the person who sent the email was the third-party accountant. Now, it basically reads, best we don't say anything to Eden or anyone else here just in case it gets back to her, and let her apprenticeship come to a natural end. It must stay confidential, let them think they have won, but hit them when they least expect it. Sweet revenge. Hi guys, I spoke to Charlotte at Eden's College, and the good news, we are not contractually obliged to keep her on after she completes her apprenticeship, which is in 6 weeks' time. I've asked Charlotte to confirm her exit date. Eden would have completed 2 years, and if she wishes to complete her year 3 module, it is up to us if we want to continue. My guess, it's a big no-no. Now, First of all, the context of this email was completely wrong because my apprenticeship didn't actually end until the January after, and I would have been on maternity leave for 2 months by then. So I mean, they got that all completely wrong. How? I don't know. I feel like the email kind of speaks for itself, because if I was a bad employee or I'd done something wrong, then you wouldn't need to find a loophole to get rid of me. You wouldn't have to send emails behind my back. You wouldn't have to be keeping things from me. So I feel like in that sense, it kind of proves my point. But what hurt me most about this email is that, if you remember in the beginning, I said that I confided in one of the managers and told her like how stressed and how worried I was. This manager was CC'd into the email. So it just upset me a lot to think that someone I had genuinely sat down and cried my eyes out to about the situation, who had reassured me everything would be fine, was involved in like this whole big thing to try and get rid of me. It just hurt. That was a massive blow to me, but you know, what can you do? Nothing actually materialized from that, because they spoke to my college and my college said, you know, her apprenticeship doesn't end until January. And on top of that, me and my employee had our own personal contract that wasn't up for another year. So yeah, again, a fourth plan that didn't materialize. And by that point, I think they just admitted defeat, because I mean, I can only imagine it got boring for them trying to ruin my life. But the one other thing I think it's important to explain is how I was treated when I came back from maternity leave, and also why I quit my job. Once I'd returned, I was made aware from one of the managers that they'd overpaid me. I think it was about 300, maybe £350 maternity pay. We basically came to the agreement that I'd pay it back £20 a week, so £80 a month until it was paid off. Now, one day when I'd finished work, I went to the beauty salon to speak to my boss about something, and she mentioned to me that she was considering selling the salon, and she basically was just letting me know that she didn't know if the new owner would keep us on as hairstylists, which I was like, that's fine, you know, it's your decision, whatever. But I just said, how would we continue with the repayment plan? She had no idea that I'd been overpaid, and she basically just said, you know, it's disrespectful, she can't afford to lose that money, it's too much, she's under so much stress as it is. And I was just like, for one, I didn't know you didn't know. Secondly, I'm paying it back. And thirdly, I didn't take the money, it was overpaid to me. But she just wasn't having it. She was like, no, I need it now, I need it all back now, you should have given it back already. And I just said, I can't afford to give you that money right now, I don't have it. And she said, that's fine, we'll just withhold your wage, so basically not pay me until I've worked the amount of hours that equals the overpayment. So no word of a lie, while we were having this conversation, I got a phone call to make me aware of a family emergency that I'm not going to go into because it's quite personal, but it was very, very serious, and I let her know this and I left straight away. Now, 45 minutes later, she called me, which I assumed was to ask that me and my family were okay. But she called me, and I'm not joking, she asked me about the money. So I said to her on the phone, I was like, I've just told you like whatever has happened, and you're actually calling me about the money. Like, I was just so shocked. And more than anything, I felt so hurt, because despite everything that had happened that year, it was the fact that she was openly prioritizing £200 over like my family's safety. And I just thought, you know, I don't want to work for someone like this anymore. I don't know why I'm forcing myself to stay here, and I quit on that day. And I tried really, really hard to find the whole conversation that I had with her that day, but I can't find it. But I did manage to find the message that I initially sent to her. So I have a screenshot of the message I sent her, but it's not in full. I managed to find like a copy and paste of the whole text that I sent to one of my friends. So I'm going to read it out, but quite a bit of it will be blanked out because it's about like personal things in my life. So I basically just messaged her saying, hi, I had a family emergency, which I mentioned as I left. In July, I was overpaid. It was not my discrepancy. I was not aware at all of overpayment until messaged me, expecting me to work for free when. Now, this is blanked out because I was in a very difficult financial position because of how my pay slips were arranged while I was working. So it was very strange. Sometimes we'd be paid 2 weeks late, sometimes 5 days early. So it was just very, very confusing. And that meant that pay slips were done all wrong, and it put me in a very difficult financial situation in a different aspect of my life. So that's the bit that's blanked out there. And then it says, and having an 11-month-old child is ridiculous and actually quite hurtful. As I just said, because of problems with how and when my pay slips have been processed. On top of that, you were telling me I will not be paid for the days I've worked. After explaining the problems I have been caused and the difficulty I'm in financially, you've disregarded that all and put me in an even worse position due to a mistake that is not at all my fault. You made it very clear today how little I mean to the business by calling me to ask about money when I just told you of my family emergency. I then basically went on to say, you know, I think I found a way to pay you back. I've also looked into overpayment and repayment, and from what I've read on Citizens Advice, it is illegal to deduct money from an employer's wage without written consent. I will do what I can to pay the money back, but as I said, I cannot survive on nothing and so cannot afford to receive no wage. She didn't actually respond to that message straight away, but what she did do was get one of the other managers to message me, and I managed to find a screenshot screenshot of that message that I had sent to one of my friends again. Now, when I sent my boss that long message, I also sent her a screenshot of the email that I had found, to which she made another member of the management team message me, and the message basically read, the boss sent me emails that came from the accountant. None of these emails came from myself or the boss. To be honest, it's the first I've seen of that email. You were never going to be made self-employed, as I told the accountant myself, and we had no problems paying maternity. We have all been on maternity at the salon, and it's not something we have had problems with, especially working in a woman's field. We have loved having you work with us and would really like to leave things on good terms. Looking back on that message, it is literally gaslighting at its finest. Like, to make me feel like because it's predominantly women that work there, you know, they would never do that. I'm basically insane, and I've like fabricated it all in my head. And do you know what's sad? For a little while, I genuinely did believe maybe I was just being paranoid or overthinking. But anyway, moving forward, I seek legal advice, but the problem was basically that I'd left it too long from when anything had happened. And, you know, they said there's actually a cut-off period, and I had basically missed that cut-off period. But I did email them a grievance letter. It took them ages to respond, and while I was waiting for them to respond, I actually had a conversation with the accountant who no longer worked there at this point. But I basically messaged her and just said, hi, it's Eden. Just need to ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind in regards to me leaving the salon. It's just that I've been told it was your doing, and I'm not sure I really believe that was the case. She then went on to say, they are unbelievable. How can I possibly be the cause when I haven't been there for over a year? I said, an email was brought to my attention a while ago about firing me when I was pregnant. That was from you to the management and my boss. When I quit, I showed my boss the email and she ignored it, but another member of management said it was nothing to do with them. It was from a while ago when you still worked. She said, let's talk. They asked me how they could get rid of you without a tribunal. The boss wanted you out. As for the manager, I'm not gonna lie, she didn't want it. It was another member of management and your boss. I said, I know they were trying to fire me and I know why, I just have no proof. And the only proof I have has now been shifted onto you, if that makes any sense. From what I've been told, it's because they didn't want to have to pay me my maternity pay. She said, that's right, the boss didn't, and I'm happy to write a statement to that effect. I mean, the boss didn't want to pay you maternity. If anything, that made me feel better because it put my mind at rest that, you know, I'm not insane. It was really going on. It did really happen. And when they did finally reply to the grievance, after literally weeks of them saying like they can't deal with it right now because this has happened and that has happened, and they hired someone else to deal with it, and it was just a lot. And then basically the final email that they sent was that, you know, they hadn't done anything wrong because I quit on my own accord, which is true. They didn't actually dismiss me unfairly because I quit because I'd had enough. And then also about the withhold of wage, they basically just said, as much as it's, you know, not moral, it's not illegal. I have no animosity towards them anymore. It's been years. It was a horrible, horrible place to work. It was so uncomfortable. It was so unstable. Like, there's so much more detail that I could have gone into, but I just wanted to explain the key points of like how I was treated as a pregnant woman. And yeah, the main point of this video is just to show you that, you know, there are better ways to handle it than to just accept it. I feel like I was a massive pushover and I just accepted anything they threw at me because I was so scared of being unemployed and not having maternity. So the fact that I was so dependent on them financially, I allowed them to treat me terribly. If you know that your employer is treating you badly or discriminating you or anything like that, never ever prioritize finance over your mental health because it does not end well. Try and get out of the situation while you can. Seek advice while you can. Don't leave it too late like I did. And yeah, hopefully, you know, if you are in this situation or you find yourself in this situation in the future, you know to seek help then and there rather than waiting. But yeah, if you found this video helpful or interesting in any way, then give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment if you think what they did was horrible, which I'm hoping all of you do. And of course, if you haven't already, then please subscribe. You know, I appreciate it so much. But for now, bye.